Okay. So in today's lecture, I'll continue the discussion on public goods. So we had ended at the point when we were discussing riding.
হ্যাঁ
So is there any question about free riding?
স্যার এটার পরের স্লাইডটা বুঝতে পারিনি
Acha.
হ্যাঁ
Okay. Acha. In economics, there's a branch called experimental economics. So what happens is people are placed in a certain situation and then their behavior is observed. There are some examples of this. একটা ছিল the good samaritan. তোমাদের মধ্যে যারা ক্রিশ্চিয়ান স্কুলে পড়েছিলে, ডু ইউ নো দ্য স্টোরি? অভিক তুমি বললে না?
স্যার ভুলে গেছে এখন মনে নেই
আচ্ছা
আর।
আচ্ছা, ওই গুড সামারিটান হচ্ছে যে ওই একটা লোক যাচ্ছিল, তো হি ওয়াজ ট্রাভেলিং ইন দ্য ডেজার্ট and he got mugged and he was lying in the by the roadside when a person of his tribe came to him, and the person looked at him and said, oh, he has been robbed, so I'd better go away because I'll get into trouble over him. Then a Samaritan came and he looked at him and said, look, this person is in trouble, so I have to help him. And then he took him up, he tended to his wounds, he gave him clothes and took him to the city, gave him some money and so on. So the conclusion was that this good Samaritan will go to heaven, while the first person, even though he belonged to the same tribe, is actually not that person's friend and he will rot in hell. Okay, so this is the story. Now what happened is people, a group of psychologists tried to test this theory. How will they do this? Suppose they experimented on your class. So they called 25 of you and they said that, look, on Tuesday, you have to come to college, and exactly at 10 o'clock, I'm going to start an examination. Now I know the address of each of you. So what I've done is I have prepared 25 actors. And as soon as you come out of your house, the actor comes to you and he just falls over and he pretends to have fainted. Now you have a dilemma. If you help him, you will be late for the exam and you will fail. On the other hand, if you don't help him, you don't know that he is shamming, so you believe that he will die. So then the psychologists studied that exactly how did the people behave, how many helped him, what was the gender, what was the education level, and so on. So this is how experiments are performed. Do you understand this?
yes sir
হ্যাঁ
Acha. So then what happened was, in this paper by Marvel and Ames, people were told that, okay, you have to sit before a computer and you're given, let us say, 1000 rupees. So you can allocate this either on your own consumption, so you can purchase a private good, or you can spend something on a public good. Now, if you have just 1000 and you spend the entire amount on private good, then your consumption will be worth only 1000, right? But suppose you spend 500 on private commodity and 500 on public commodity. How much will your consumption be? Think of a 2-person class. Yeah, so we have 500 is being spent on private commodity and the remaining 500 on a public good. So what will be total consumption?
Thousand, sir.
Hmm?
1,000.
Now, see, there are two persons, right? So
Yes.
let us say A, he's spending 500 on private good, right? And 500 on public good. Yeah. B has the same pattern, right? Now, what is the total supply of public good? 1,000, right? So how much does a person consume? He consumes 500 of the private good and the entire amount of the public good. So total
Mm.
consumption is 1,500,
Mm.
right? So if you spend on a public good, the advantage is, see, if both of you spend on public goods, then your consumption will go up. But what B can do is, B can also free ride. He says that I'm going to spend the entire amount on private goods, right? So now what is consumption? This is the supply of public good. So A will consume 500 private and 500 public. His consumption is 1,000, right? How much is B consuming? 1,000 here and 500 public. So his consumption is 1,500. So B is able to increase his consumption by free riding.
But you said B is only consuming private.
Exactly. No, B is spending on only private.
Okay. Okay.
ঠিক আছে? So he's consumes this 1,000 plus
Hmm.
this is non-rival. Exclusion cannot be applied.
Yes,
So he
yes,
is
yes.
consuming this also. ঠিক আছে? So what is best for you? Best is you spend entirely on private good and the other person spends on public goods, right? But going by this logic, this is true for every person in your class. So if every person, what every person will say that, okay, I will be like B. The other persons will be hopefully like A. Okay, so everyone will actually invest in private good. So this is the theory of free riding, right? Now,
না নেট অফ করবেন
now what Marvel and Ames argued was, wanted to see was, does free riding really exist? So if I get hold of some people, so I ask all of you that, okay, you have got 1,000. Now decide how much to spend on private, how much to spend on public. So then it was found that yes, there was free riding, but people contributed about 40 to 60% on public goods. Okay, so that means they spend about 400 to 600 on public goods, and the remaining was spent on private goods. So theoretically, they should have been free riding. Everyone should have invested in private goods. But in reality, what these papers researchers saw was you had a large investment in public goods. So they modified the experiment so that the conditions change. Um, so I haven't read the paper, but it was something like that. You can say that you have two periods, but you don't know what the other people are doing. You have two periods, you can see what the other people is doing in the first round. So in this way, the experimental settings were modified. But in each case, it was found that on an average, public goods got 40 to 60%. Okay. There was only one exception. See, what these people had done was they had gone to the university and had recruited students from different departments. So they went and got hold of some students in sociology and played the experiment. Then they got hold of some physics students and they found out what is the contribution to public goods. When they came to economics, they found that economists free wrote. They were the only persons who tried to free write. They invested only 20% of resources on public goods and 80% on private goods. Now, what is more surprising is that, see, if these economic students had known about free riding, then this can be understandable. But what happened was these people were from the first year, undergraduate first year. So they did not know the theory of public goods. They did not know what free riding was. So even without knowing what free riding was, most of them adopted the strategy of free riding. So they named their paper Economist Free Ride. Does anyone else? And their conclusion was that except for economists, no one free riding actually is not a major problem. So is this clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if you remember at the start, we had defined club goods or public goods. So these are commodities for whom consumption is non-rival, but we can apply the exclusion principle. So we had said that even if exclusion is applicable, still we should not apply it. We had shown this using the bridge example. Now, suppose we have congestion externalities. That is, we have a road or we have a bridge. Initially, there were very few users. So you could use the road or bridge very easily. And welfare economics states that the extra user should not be charged. Now suppose the traffic has gone up so much that you are having traffic jams in the bridge. In that case, we should apply exclusion principle. So Buchanan argued that we can form clubs and members will have to pay a fee. It can be an annual fee or whatever. And once they become members of the club, they can enjoy the public good. But if you don't enter the club, you will not get to use the public good. So exclusion will be applied to you, to all users. If you pay, you can use. If you don't pay, you cannot use. Okay. And then Buchanan showed that in this case, the earlier model will not work. You will have new conditions for optimal provisioning of club goods. So I'm not going into the Buchanan model. I'm going into an extension of Buchanan's model, but by that time the class will end. So I'll just ask at this point, club goods is clear? What we mean by club goods?
So can you repeat once again?
Okay. So club goods, the definition is that consumption is non-rival, just as in the case of a public good. But the exclusion principle can be applied.
Applied.
Okay. So this is the cell 2. Okay. So
Yes.
even if exclusion can be applied, normally we should not apply exclusion. We should not charge a price. Only if there are traffic jams, we should apply a charge. So the concept becomes something like that only if you pay, you can use the resource. So that is why these commodities are called club goods. Okay, so it's like clubs. Only club members who pay the subscription can use the benefits.
Means club goods are type of public goods. Like
It is a type of public goods in which you have congestion externalities.
okay.
In pure public goods, exclusion cannot be applied. In club goods, exclusion can be applied.
So if
Okay.
you are not a member of the club, then we need to pay the
No,
exclusion
you
principle
can't
will be
use it.
applied.
Once you pay,
I cannot
you
use
become
it.
member.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm ending the class now and then I'm restarting. I've just 1 minute left.
Okay.
Okay. So suppose we have a club good. One example is that of civic services. Suppose providing electricity, water, cleaning the streets, and so on. So suppose you have one house, or let us say you have 10 houses, and a person comes and collects, cleans up all the garbage vans and so on. So in that case, it can be one person is enough. But suppose the number of houses increases. You have a larger families, and as a result of this, that one person will not be enough. So you are going to have some sort of congestion externalities. So in this case, Tybalt suggested a very interesting model. So we'll not go into the mathematical derivation, just what he tried to, what his results were. So Tybalt assumed that you have a city, and in that city, you have groups of people. Now within the group, all individuals are identical in terms of tastes and their income. But between groups, their preferences change and their ability to pay, that is their income, that also changes. So in general, we observe that if you belong to a richer family, you will want better quality civic services. And obviously, if you have a lower income, then you will want a different set of civic services. For instance, if you belong to a rich family, it's likely that the parents will want to send their child to a private school. But in case of a poor family, they will want education to be part of the civic services. Now the city, according to Tybalt, is divided into wards, just like in Calcutta. So you have designated areas, and in each area you have a civic authority. So each person, this authority, will offer a vector. This vector comprises of the civic services, and along with it, they have a price. And then the residents are told that, okay, you can relocate without any cost. So Tybalt showed that in this case, you will have massive relocation. And ultimately what will happen is there will be formation of similar zones. So each ward will be inhabited by similar people. And between wards, we will see that people have different preferences and they also vary according to the economic status. So you will have some wards in which you have very high income people and certain types of civic services will be offered. You will also have wards in which slums predominate. In these cases, the tax that is paid, the price, that is very low. But the quality of civic services is also very poor. And you can have a different vector, like education will be part of it, health services will be part of it, and so on. So in this way, if you look at the city, you will find that similar people live in our particular ward. And the wards differ based on their economic ability. So this Tybalt hypothesis was used to justify zoning. Do you know what zoning is?
No,
Zoning is a type of civic planning in which you have a particular locality and suppose it's a high-end locality. So only high-end people will be allowed to reside over there. You will have only multi-storied buildings, with large compounds, and so on. If you go to the low end, you are going to have slums, just like Dharavi. You can have in-between zones also, where you have small houses, basically similar. So zones basically mean that the city is divided into distinct clusters, and each cluster is similar with respect to housing, the economic status of the residents, and so on. So Tybalt argued that you're going to have this sort of results just if you have club goods. And in reality, what happens is that suppose a slum set is generated besides the multi-storied building. What will happen is the authorities will intervene, or maybe the residents of the multi-storied building will intervene, and they will buy out the slum dwellers. They will tell them either you have to shift to our complex or you will have to shift to the Dharavi area and reside in a slum. Okay, but you cannot have mixed settlements. In a particular area, everyone has to be more or less identical. Okay. So this is the Tybalt hypothesis, that birds of a feather will flock together. Now, another type of commodity, we had pure public good, we had club goods, and we had private goods. A fourth type of commodity is common property resources. In case of common property, consumption is rival. So that means if you have a certain amount S, this is the stock, this is equal to consumption of A and plus consumption of B. So if A increases his consumption, then B's consumption will fall and vice versa. So examples of common property resources are environmental resources, like you can have groundwater, you can have fishing reserves, and you can have common grazing land. In fact, the term common property was first used to refer to common grazing land. In Europe and in Great Britain, every village had a certain amount of land in which people could take all the cattle, and the cattle could graze in that land. It was called commons in short. So over time, it was seen that the commons disappeared. Now, a biologist named Garrett Hardin wrote a paper which was published in, I think, Science 1968, in which he explained why the common grazing land disappeared, why they were privatized. So his model, he developed a very simple model, and this model was called tragedy of the commons. Okay. Now, I'd asked SM to discuss the theory of iterative dominant strategy. She has discussed this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what you have over here is you have two persons, A and B, and you can see that this is a game theory matrix. This is the payoff. The first component is the payoff to A. So -3, over here 1, then in the second row, -4 and 0. These are the payoffs to A. I'll explain how they come about later. B's payoff is -3, -1, -4 and 0. Okay. Now, the model is something like this, that every person has a certain number of cows. Okay. So the cows give milk, which is sold in the market. And this is the income of all the people. Now, Hardin looked at the decision. What was the choice of the villagers? So you had two choices. One is you can increase your herd size. So you can increase the number of cows, or you can keep number of cows same. Right. Okay. Now, if you increase cows, this will have two effects. First is you will have more milk. So the extra cow gives you milk and you can go and sell it in the market. So you get higher income. Just let me check this. Okay. So you get an income of ₹5. Now who gets this ₹5? It goes only to the individual who is adding to his herd. So this is the benefit. What is the cost? The cost is if you have more cows, then the grazing there's competition between the cows for the grass. As a result of this, the milk production of the original cows will go down. As a result of this, you are going to get less income. So here, the assumption is the total milk production falls by 4. Now, this is shared by all villagers. Okay, so if you have 2 persons, it is the per capita cost is -2. Mhm. No, sorry, this is 3. So that means it will be 1.5. না, এক মিনিট একটু দেখে নিই। আচ্ছা, no, no. I've got the numbers wrong. 1 -4. আচ্ছা, তাহলে এটা ওকে। Sorry, this is 8. Sorry, this is 8. So the cost will be -4 per capita. Okay. So I'm repeating that if you increase the cows, this will have 2 impact. One is the person who increases the number of cows will get more milk. If he sells it, he gets an income of additional income of ₹5. On the other hand, the total milk falls because there's less grass for everyone, for all the cows, and so the milk production of the existing cows falls. Now this cost is shared by all the owners. So there are 2 persons. So the cost per capita cost will be -8 by 2, which is -4. Okay. Now, if you look over here, both people can keep their herd size same. In that case, they don't have any additional revenue. They don't have any additional cost either. It is 0, 0. Now suppose A increases his herd size. Okay. So in that case, what will happen is A's revenue will go up by 5. So his revenue goes up by 5. Now suppose B keeps the herd size same. Then what is the per capita cost? -4. So A gets a additional profit of 1. What happens to B? B has not increased herd size, so it is 0. But B has to bear a cost of 4, -4. So B's cost is, B's additional revenue is -4. So you can see over here, A has increased herd size, but B has kept herd size same. A gets 1 and B's payoff is -4. Over here, what happens is both of them have increased herd size. So this will be 2 into 4 for both A and B. So that means this is 5 minus 8 equal to minus 3. So you can see that both the persons will get an additional revenue of minus 3. In other words, their revenue is actually going to go down by minus 3. This is just the symmetric case of this. B is increasing herd size, A keeps the herd size constant. So the payoffs will be reversed. This will be minus 4 and 1 comes as the second component. Okay, is this part clear? How we are constructing the payoff matrix?
Yes.
Sir, एक बार. Sir, can you explain one more time?
Acha. Which payoff did you find difficult? This blue one?
Red.
Red ta. Acha.
Mm-hmm.
In case of red, both of them have increased herd size. Okay. So what is the additional revenue? 5. ঠিক আছে? আচ্ছা, what is the cost?
আচ্ছা.
Cost হচ্ছে -4 because A has increased herd size. ঠিক আছে? সেই সঙ্গে তো B ও herd size বাড়িয়েছে. So you're going to have another -4. Okay.
স্যার দুটো -4 কি করে হচ্ছে?
দেখো, তুমি তো herd size বাড়িয়েছো, তাহলে -4 আসছে, ঠিক আছে?
হ্যাঁ.
আর এইখানে কি হচ্ছে? B has also increased herd size.
Okay.
So this is for A and this is for because B has increased herd size.
Okay.
So actually, see over here, this is your increasing number of cows by 1. ঠিক আছে? Only one person is increasing number of cows. Here, 2 persons have increased number of cows. So it will be -4 and -4. This is for A, this is for B. ঠিক আছে? So it's -3. B এর ক্ষেত্রেও একই হবে. It will be -3. Yeah? আচ্ছা. So now the question is, what are they going to choose? So I'm going to just cross out B's case. Yes. So this is only A's payoff. A's got a choice of increasing herd, right? He'll get a payoff of -3 or 1, depending upon what B does. Now suppose if A keeps the herd size same, he'll get a payoff of either -4 or 0.
Yes.
Now suppose B decides to increase herd size. What should A do? Look at this column. What is A's best strategy? If he keeps herd same, his payoff is -4. If he increases herd size, his payoff is -3. And remember, A is a maximizing agent.
Increase herd size.
He's increasing herd size. Now suppose B says, I'll keep the herd size same. A will get 1 if he increases number of cows, or it will be 0. Again, what is he going to do? He will increase the herd size. So this is, you can see that here, this row is better than this row. -3 is better than -4. 1 is better than 0.
0.
So we say that increase herd size dominates keeping herd size same. Clear?
Hmm.
So what we have found is A is always going to increase herd size. Now what will B do? See, suppose A says, I'm going to increase herd size. In that case, if B increases herd size, he's going to get -3. If he keeps herd size same, he's going to get -4. So look at it row wise. What should it do now? He should go for -3.
Hmm.
His loss is
Yes.
minimized.
Minimum.
If A keeps the herd size same, again we find it is better if he increases herd size.
Hard size.
Then he gets a payoff of 1. If he keeps herd size same, his payoff will be 0. So now we can see that this column dominates the second column. -3, 1 dominates, -4, 0. Yeah. So that means B is also going to increase herd size.
Hard size.
Yes. So that means in this situation, both the players A and B, they will increase the number of cows. So what is the payoff? -3 -3. This is the equilibrium. But is this optimal? Can they find a better off outcome? See, this blue is the better of outcome, right? They are not gaining anything, but they are not, neither losing anything. They are just breaking even. So this blue point, both of them keep herd size same. That is the optimal solution. But the solution that will emerge is increasing herd size. This is suboptimal. Both parties lose, they get only -3, where they could have got 0. So what happens is, if both parties are increasing herd size, the herd will get overexploited and ultimately it is going to get degraded and exhausted. So all the grass will get finished, it will become fallow land, barren land, and ultimately it will get, someone will buy up the land. Okay, so this is what happened in Great Britain. The villages started with a common grazing land. Then because of this model, all of them started increasing herd size. The commons was overexploited and all the grass was finished. So Hardin argued that community managed resources should be privatized. Now, Hardin wrote the paper in 1968 and it was extremely influential. But then starting from the 1980s, there were some critics of Hardin's theory. And ultimately, a political scientist, Elena Ostrom from Indiana University, wrote a book called Governing the Commons. This was her PhD thesis, and she pointed out that there were many common property resources which were being sustainably managed for centuries. She considered the case of Spain and Philippines, where you had irrigation network. So in irrigation, what you have is, you have the people whose land is near the irrigation canal. So these people can take in all the water and then leave a very small amount for the tail enders. But in reality, what happened was there was equitable sharing of the irrigation water. Then there was also a case of the main islands. This is near the Canada Newfoundland area. And what happened was that people in this main island overexploited the salmon reserves, and the salmon nearly got finished. Then they realized what was happening, and they got together and said that, okay, we are going to set limits to our catch. So every day, previously, we used to go out and catch as many fish as possible. Now we are going to have a limit. We will not catch more than this amount. And what happened was the system worked. There was no way in which you could monitor them, but because of certain reasons, the main island fisheries was sustainably managed for quite some time. Then the original people left, newcomers came in, and then again there was the overexploitation and tragedy of the commons. So Ostrom argued that just because you have common resources, common property resources, it doesn't mean that it is going to be overexploited and degraded. Depending upon the circumstances, it is quite possible that such resources are going to be sustainably managed. So she identified the conditions that when common property will be sustainably managed and so on. And as a result of this, she got the Nobel Prize in 2009. She shared it with Oliver Williamson. And in fact, my thesis was on Ostrom's work, but Ostrom was not very happy because I criticized her, and she wrote a paper in Ecological Economics 2005 in which she criticized my work. So anyway, she's dead of cancer, so we can forget about her and move to the last slide. So this is the case of merit ones, and this is very relevant now. It is actually not completely related to public goods, but in many cases, we discuss it just after public goods. So it is a commodity whose consumption is desirable from the social point of view. So examples are helmet for motorcycle riders, safety belt, your vaccination, and now the mask. So basically what happens is that if you wear a mask, you will get some benefit, but the social benefit is even more. So because you are not getting the full benefit, many people do not consume such commodities. So people can smoke, they can take drugs or indulge in alcoholism. These are the opposite of merit ones. These are bads. So from the social point of view, consumption of such items should be stopped. On the other hand, consumption of goods like helmet, masks, etc. should be promoted. So it is suggested that the government should intervene and force the people to consume the such merit ones. So in the case of vaccination, for instance, they can force people that, okay, you have to immunize your child. If you don't wear masks, then you'll have to do sit-ups. If you don't wear helmets, we are going to fine you. This sort of thing. In case of alcohol and drug, if you consume drugs or alcohols or smoking, then we are going to levy taxes on you. So these are merit ones, and basically their items whose consumption should either be promoted or items whose consumption should be reduced. Okay, so I'll finish off with the references. The classic reference for public goods is Johansson's book, Public Economics. If I remember correctly, it was chapter 2. A very good introduction is given by C.M. Allen, Theory of Taxation. It is a book published by Penguin, very small book, just 3-4 pages, excellent summary. But the problem is neither of them are available on the net, and I don't have copies. I had Johansson, but I've lost it. In fact, I was about to draw it from the university when it closed. So in this situation, one possibility is you read Pindyck and Rubinfield's Microeconomics. That will give you a fairly good summary of public goods, and later on, I'll try to get hold of Allen and give it to you. For advanced reading, there's a 2-part article, Anomalies, by Richard Thaler. If you are interested, this is not part of your course. Okay, if you want to read it just as light reading. What Thaler does is, he looks at certain cases where economic theory predicts a certain type of behavior. And people have tested economic theory and found that people actually behave in a different way. Like in the free riding case. Economic theory says that people should free ride, but in reality, people don't free ride. So you can just read it, go through it. If you understand it, fine. If you don't understand it, that's perhaps even better. So this is just amusement. I mean, you will like it. Don't think that you have to understand everything. It's part of your exam. Just read Thaler's book, paper as a light reading. I think many of you will enjoy the paper. You'll find that in many cases, theory is wrong, so you'll enjoy it. So any questions?
Sir, how does wearing
Acha.
helmet have social benefit?
Okay, I'm ending meeting right now. My time is up. I'm rejoining now.